Thank you. All right. Sorry, does anyone know where my talk presentation is? I told ChatGPT to write it and bring it here, but where is it? Oh well, I guess we'll have to improvise then. Luckily, I've did a thing or two in the past, and I know a bit about those topics, so hopefully it will not be too bad. I want to talk today about AI systems and the shift that is happening now that people can witness. First of all, I think we can all agree that the open web is a nice thing. We all love our websites. We all love being able to quickly produce them with WordPress, publish content in the internet. And those websites, they are very dear to our heart, and we put a lot of effort and love into them. However, we need to talk about the LLM in the room. The thing is, some users nowadays, they don't appreciate your website anymore. They have different ways of processing the information, of gathering the information. So first of all, why is this important, and what makes us think that we need to care about this? On this chart, you can see where the money goes. And if you want to find out what the future brings, always follow the money. See where it leads. So on this chart, you see at the bottom, this purple bar, it starts to slowly become bigger. But if you consider that last few years, we had an economic downturn, and there was way less investment, you can see that the last year, projects with the main focus of AI were 1/3 of all investments from the big investment companies, so from venture money. This makes us believe that some people they do a lot of work in trying to find out where to invest, where they see the biggest potential, and that starts to slowly become AI. So that's why this is important. This makes us assume that AI is happening. There is no way around it. Whether you like it or not, AI really doesn't care. It is coming very strong, very quickly at us, and we need to understand what that means. And we need to understand what implications that has for us as the consumers of the open web, but also for us as the producers of the open web. So we don't want to be too surprised. We want to be prepared for what is to come and know how to best manage this transition. So this new paradigm, this is you can consider this a simplification. This new paradigm is basically, we had early browsers where you click and scroll and navigate. Then at some point, mobile phones happened, and all of a sudden we had apps that had few different user experience paradigms where you swiped and you tapped. And then we had voice interfaces where you just talked into some device, and sometimes it even did what it was told. And now we have AI assistants, where you can just have a chat with it and hopefully get it to agree that what you need is actually what it should do. These are 4 fundamental changes in a UX flow, in how people operate, in how humans interact with machines. And that is what is happening right now. There's a new paradigm coming up in terms of how human interaction works. We will explore a few questions during this talk. The first one is, what is changing? So we'll make sure that everyone is up to speed, everyone knows what we're talking about here. Then we'll talk about the technological impact of this. Then we'll talk about the economic impact of this. And then we'll look at what that does mean for your website, and we'll look at what that means for WordPress as an ecosystem. And hopefully those are the questions that you're all concerned about. If I missed one, let me know after the talk, please. So, first of all, what is changing? In November 30th, in 2022, there was launch of something called ChatGPT. And probably that is the most prominent LLM-based system that you know. That was the moment where these new generations of AI systems entered the mainstream. ChatGPT had a huge number of users in a very short amount of time. It had a quick pickup. People immediately accepted it as something valuable, as something they wanted to play around with. And everyone assumed that this is the big thing that happened, this LLM. However, as you can see, this was version 3.5. GPT has been going strong already for several years there. For those that were following AI systems more closely, GPT-2 was already pretty phenomenal. GPT-3 even more so. And GPT 3.5 was specifically adapted to be used in ChatGPT, but the main difference here, at this time around, was not which version of LLM was used. It was this one. The multi-step incremental approach to interacting with that LLM. Because those LLMs, they are non-deterministic in nature. You enter something, you get something out, and it might be useful or not, or it might be complete nonsense. The big difference with ChatGPT was that you didn't need to be a prompt engineer to get a one-shot answer that was useful. You could just keep adding to the discussion, give it more and more context until it produced a result that was useful. And that was the fundamental change, not the LLM system. We have been playing around with these for years. This multi-step incremental user interface, that was the big change that ChatGPT brought about. That was what made it mainstream. So before that, when you interacted with your browser, you tried to communicate your user intent to the browser, and if you didn't get the right result, well, you scrapped that. You entered a new user intent, and you got a new result. And you did that until, at some point, you actually figured out how to properly communicate your user intent. And now with this new approach of this multi-step approach to user interfaces, you produce a user interface once, and as long as the result is not satisfying, you add to the context of this conversation that you're having. That is much more similar to how you interact with humans. Because you've probably witnessed that in the past. When you talk to humans, they also sometimes tend to not get it right away. Humans also don't work zero shot all the time. So oftentimes you need to clarify things. You need to add more context to the discussion until everyone is on the same page. So this is much closer to humans interact with humans. And so this new interface for human-machine interaction is actually much closer to how we operate between people. So now hopefully everyone has a clearer idea of what I think is this big change, this paradigm shift. So what is the technological impact of it? First of all, let's talk about the content distribution. With content distribution, first of all, in this new paradigm, a lot of the content is retrieved by machines, not by humans. So humans normally would go to your website, they would scroll through your website, maybe inadvertently click on some ads while they're doing that, and then at some point they retrieve the information that they want. When your content is retrieved by machines, it is preferred to have simplified formats or APIs, because that makes it easier for those machines to actually retrieve the content. If they fail to retrieve your content, they will not let you know. They will not let you know that, oh, you should fix your website because I couldn't actually promote it. Your website will just be discarded in a set of results. That's it. It was just not producing anything meaningful. And then there's also systems that are emerging like LLMs.txt, which is an alternative representation of your website just for those machines that produces a summary of where to find what and what it means. And then if your content is used as context instead of the end result, that also means that the meaning that you put into your content is much more important than the presentation. So while it is nice for humans to have great aesthetics, great colors, the machines really don't care. They might care somewhat about what your presentation represents in terms of the hierarchical structure of your content, but that's about it. Things like colors are pretty much meaningless at this point. And then also, for the content distribution, those machines, they incur a cost per token. So a token is a piece of the information. It might be a small word, a piece of a word. And each token that is processed is incurring some cost. It might be only a very minor cost for a single token, but this adds up quickly, and this means that we could end up in a state where the most token-efficient content is actually favored because it's the one that's the cheapest to forward to the users. And if it still solves the problem, if it still answers the question of the user, then that is the cheapest result to present. So for any search engine that is actually doing cost reduction or profit optimization, they will favor that type of content. Then we have the content consumption. Curated, rephased results are what these search engines or these chat systems usually reproduce. So the user might not actually see a direct representation of the source website. They get an impressionistic version of it. They get the essence of it. So that means that you need to have a coherent essence of your content that is not misleading. So you should favor content that has a single point that it tries to make over collections of information that are all grouped in one post where the post is in no particular direction. Then the natural language is used for input and output, which means that for your content, pronounceable might actually be way more important than elegant, because people might need to speak into the microphone to query that content, and they will hear it over a text-to-speech system. So if it's not pronounceable, it's probably not usable. And then also the description is more important than the visual representation. And for a lot of these points, what it boils down to is that accessibility, all those guidelines for accessibility, you didn't do those in vain just because websites disappear. Because those machines, they interact more like humans. They have the same issues when your content is inaccessible. So keep that in mind. Also, the content might be a relative representation, meaning it will not be shown on its own. It will be shown as a comparison to other content. So instead of this site says XYZ, the content might be some sites say this and some sites say that, and it will produce the references later on. So keep that also in mind. Sometimes your content might actually not represent its absolute points, but just how it compares to other content for the same topic. This basically boils down to having an opinion and a position on topics, and knowing that you will then be brought into the discussion as an expert for that side of the topic, not for the topic in general. And if the user asks for a certain side, they will not see your content. The content will always be used in a relative way. So one of my predictions, and keep in mind that those are just predictions. The image of the time machine earlier on, that was not an actual photo. That was just a cartoon. We don't really have that. So one of the predictions is that LLMs will be used as user agents at some point. Right now, your user agent, when you're navigating web content, is the browser. It actually has a property that is called user agent to let everyone know what type of browser you're using as your user agent to browse the web. And my prediction is that at some point, you will actually end up with a personal LLM system that is individualized, that is fine-tuned for your needs, and that will replace your default browser for most of your interactions. That means that the system that you use as a user agent, it knows more about you, it knows your preferences and your goals, and it will actually optimize some of that content that it retrieves. Also, it could end up being an agentic network of personal experts. So your personal user agent might have different roles that it can fulfill and help you where it's specialized to solve your particular problems. In general, we found with these AI systems that the collaboration of smaller experts is actually preferable to one large generic LLM because it generally produces better content, better results. So that could look a bit like this, where your user input goes into a personalized LLM. It accesses your personal context knowledge base to gather all the necessary context that goes beyond the generic general knowledge that the LLM already has. Then it engages this network of agentic experts for subtasks to retrieve the web information, to synthesize the knowledge, and then that information is brought back to you. So your user input is not just triggering a website, your user input is triggering your internal team that helps you figure out what the answer is. The conclusion of that, unfortunately, is that we can expect a decline in browser usage. So first of all, the main source of traffic will shift. Search patterns will gradually shift towards agents. That will have as a result that observability will suffer. So where now it's pretty easy to track the users as they navigate the web, that will become more difficult because some of these operations, they are not clear to associate with a single interaction, and some of these operations will just completely disappear. You will not be able to see them anymore, to track them anymore. And finally, this will end up in a shift in website requirements. So necessarily when the incentives changes, the end results also change. They just follow the incentives. And so we can expect things like less budget for visual design because you need more information, architecture, more structural design. The UX might be less important, and also things like inbound marketing might be less important because they just become less effective and are then less supported. So what is the economical impact? The open web business model is currently heavily centered around display ads. So the ad economy around web content, it will become less relevant as the ads that are usually displayed within the website that you clicked on, they are only displayed for users that browse the web through the browser. For the LLM agents, those ads, they don't mean nothing. They are just being discarded. The LLM agent will not forward these ads. But that means that we need to figure out what the next economic model is. This ad economy might be adaptable to work within the context of LLMs and chat interfaces. We don't have an established model yet for that. But it is something where we need to figure out how to make this new ecosystem sustainable. What we don't want is to have the default economic model that is the display ads, and as much as people hate ads, it is what keeps the open web running because it keeps it sustainable. We don't want that to just drop and not have a valid replacement. So the issue basically can be represented by this. If users don't go to your website, there's no ad revenue. They go to the AI assistant and get a direct answer. It's as basic as that, but that is what we're currently seeing already with search results, where the search results, they just give you the answer. They don't let people click on the website to see the ads. They just give the answer. And another prediction is that we will see a shift in ad spend, meaning that the ad spend might be less relevant for written content, because written content, on one hand, is easier to produce nowadays, but it might also be less relevant because these LLM systems extract ideas, not the exact content that was written. And display ads on blogs will become very ineffective. There will probably be a further push towards influencer content, because you can aggregate information that somebody writes. But if people really want to see a certain personality, that cannot easily be just synthesized away by LLMs. Someone's YouTube channel, where people just want to see that face in the morning with their coffee because they like that face, that will not go away with LLMs. So ads will probably move more towards this influencer marketing model than display ads on blogs. And also, there's a definite risk here for the publishing sector, and we need to talk about alternative monetization models to make sure that publishing valuable content, correct news content, all the things that we currently still rely on, that remains a sustainable business model. There is a definite risk here, and we shouldn't wait too long to come up with alternatives and run tests and experiments to figure something out. We need to figure something out here. And then another prediction, monetization generally for information will be redefined. There's a big chance that those LLM and chat interactions, that they will try to extract and sell value, where you could think about having an ad space in voice interactions, for example. So you talk to your AI chat assistant, and all of a sudden it says, oh, wait, before we continue, let me quickly tell you about this and that. So yeah, that might happen. It might also be that all of a sudden there's a pay-to-train model, where you can get preferred spots within the training materials of the LLMs, so that next iteration of the LLM models will contain more references to your content rather than someone else's. And who knows, maybe we'll see AI influencers where you pay people because they have a really good connection to the next models of LLMs to get your information in there. And then we can also expect the inference cost to somehow be forwarded to users. Right now, there's a lot of loss leading going on because the big companies that are running these models, they are trying to basically just stake the real estate right now. But as soon as that has stopped, they will go into cost reduction and profit maximizing mode. And they will probably find ways of forwarding the cost of the inference to the users. So my conclusion here is that we need to rethink the open web. The open web right now relies on a monetization model that is very likely to stop being very effective soon. So we need to really rethink how that works. Those established models, as I said, there are incentives that are shuffled around, and that means that very likely things will change. And the information itself is not a monetizable end result. So we need to be creative and come up with new ways of extracting value and extracting monetization out of the publishing act. So what does that mean for your personal side, for your agency side, for your company side? First of all, with LLM search engines, AI search engines, it's a bit more of an all or nothing approach, where before you could have very profitable websites that were on page 2 of the Google search results for many different terms, page 2 will just not cut it for these AI systems, because they will just take the top spots and then provide summaries. You cannot click to the next page in those results. So you need to make sure that you produce content that is the authority in some way, rather than generic content that is good enough in many different ways. Because this good enough was good enough in the past paradigm, it's not anymore in this one. Also, these long tail pages, all the ads on those will become less and less efficient. So having old sites around that happen to just have low traffic for random keywords and putting ads on them, that will probably stop being effective very soon and not produce any return anymore. And then the search will become more focused. The user will not only state the intent once, the user will state the intent and then refine it with context. And every time they refine it, the search queries will become more and more focused. So that means think more about being the expert in very focused topics rather than producing generic content, or having different subsections of your websites that produce very specific content. Because you want to be the only authority for a certain very specific problem to solve. And then another prediction, there will be a shift in how search engines work. That is obvious, of course, that has already happened, you will say, but let me explain. Right now, the search engines, they are still trying to optimize for this human experience. But what we're seeing as a shift now is that the LLMs use the search engines to get the top results and then produce a summary of that to the user. So the search engines are actually used by machines now instead of by humans. So that will mean that they will be optimized in a different way. They will be optimized for fast retrieval against precise queries. The pages after the first page will become less and less relevant, where potentially we might actually see that some search engines don't care about pagination anymore because it doesn't make sense in that new environment. And finally, we can expect a quality decrease for human search. And my guess is that that is what we're currently seeing with the Google search. There's so many people that complain about what is currently going on with the Google search results. And my guess is that, nobody says that officially, of course, but my guess is that they are trying to optimize it for better retrieval by the LLMs. And while they're doing that, they are in this transitionary state, and it decreases the quality for humans. There's no incentive to improve that anymore. So the conclusion is, be a personal authority. Generic content doesn't cut it anymore. Just producing curated summaries of someone else's content doesn't cut it anymore. You need to be the expert, have quality and uniqueness, and be honing in on a certain niche. And also, you need to push yourself towards the marketing front instead of your output. So your content will never be the end result, so it can easily be aggregated away. But if people come to your website because of you instead of because of your content, because they like your take on things, because they like your personality, that is way more important, and that can never be replaced by those LLMs. Because whatever they do, they will not be you. Hopefully. So what does this mean for WordPress? First of all, WordPress has currently a strong position and outlook in this rapid change. As open source, it has a natural language in everything LLM, because not only can all the content be part of the training data, but how WordPress works is part of the training data. So the LLMs will naturally know how to navigate WordPress sites, what to watch out for, what the markup means, so that they can properly filter the content to actually understand what means what. So this open source nature is definitely a natural advantage here. And also its impact as a market leader shouldn't be underestimated, because if we now figure out ways of feeding the content better to those LLMs as the WordPress community, we basically have built-in critical mass. Whatever we decide is the next step that is already a de facto standard right away. So we can actually have a big impact on this will play out over the coming months and years, hopefully. However, what I'm seeing is with the block editor, we have a bit of a fuzzy focus. There's a lot of colliding incentives there. And some issues that I think we need to look at is we need to double down on support for structured data. Right now, there's so much focus on the visual representation of the content, and that will be less and less important. So while we still want to make beautiful websites, we need to double down on getting proper structural control of your content into the block editor. And also, there needs to be a better hierarchical understanding so that within your website, we can properly control and manage how content relates to each other and what is just details of a larger picture represented anywhere, somewhere else. And also, we need to look at those hierarchical levels to optimize the granularity for token efficiency. As I mentioned earlier, at some point, the most token efficient website will probably be favored for just financial reasons. That's just how markets work. So we need to have more control over that. The conclusion here is that WordPress needs to refocus on structure instead of how to do the visual design. The visual styling will decrease in importance, and the structure and ease of processing is much more important in this new paradigm than the aesthetics. And then we need to prepare to support new formats. Emerging standards like LLMs.txt, which is basically just that the website has an endpoint where you can fetch a markdown summary of all the pages in one go, so that the LLM has the context, has your entire website as an easy way to add to the context of a query. WordPress needs to be able to manage that properly. And then finally, token efficiency. I think this is one key point. Nobody's talking about that right now, but just generally thinking about how markets work and evolve, the thing that costs the least money will always have an advantage over things that are more expensive to process. While there are arguments for high-end content, maybe, I don't know, it is very likely that token efficiency will be a factor in whatever we do next. So that's my talk. I'm happy to answer questions, but you will also find me later on. I'm happy to talk about all of this, and please make sure to connect with me in case you want to follow this up async over LLMs or web browsers. Thank you so much. Let's do the Q&A session.
Thank you.